You have never met them. You do not know their names. You do not know where they live, what they do, whether they are kind to their families or generous to strangers. You know almost nothing about them as individual human beings. And yet the moment you see that shirt, that other shirt, that wrong shirt, something shifts inside you. Something ancient and automatic and completely beyond your rational control. They become, in that instant, not just strangers. They become the enemy. Not metaphorically, not loosely, in the oldest and most biological sense of that word. And the strangest part? They feel exactly the same way about you. To understand why, you need to go somewhere most people never think to look. Not to a stadium, not to a rivalry match, not to the history books of two clubs separated by a city or a river or a century of contested supremacy. You need to go inside your brain. Specifically, inside a structure that has not meaningfully changed in over 2 million years. The amygdala is an almond-shaped cluster of neurons buried deep in the temporal lobe. It is one of the oldest parts of your brain. It evolved long before language, long before complex thought, long before anything that would be recognizable as modern human consciousness. Its job, its singular, relentless, tireless job, is to scan the environment for threats, tag them instantly, and prepare the body to respond. And here is what makes it so relevant to football. The amygdala does not process subtlety. It does not take time to gather evidence. It does not ask for context or nuance or a fair hearing. It sees a pattern, matches it to a threat template stored in memory, and fires. The entire process takes less than 1/5 of a second. Before your conscious mind has registered anything at all, your amygdala has already decided, friend or threat. And in your brain's ancient operating system, the short color is the threat template. Psychologist Henri Tajfel at the University of Bristol ran one of the most important and disturbing experiments in the history of social psychology.
In the early 1970s, he divided strangers into groups based on the most meaningless criteria imaginable, which of two paintings they preferred, the flip of a coin, a random number assignment. Then he asked them to distribute rewards between members of their own group and members of the other group. What he found shook the scientific community. People consistently, reliably, and almost immediately began favoring their own group and discriminating against the other, even when the groups had been formed seconds earlier on the basis of nothing whatsoever. Tajfel called this the minimal group paradigm, and what it revealed was terrifying in its simplicity. You do not need a history of conflict to create an enemy. You do not need a legitimate grievance, a real difference, or a meaningful boundary. You need only a label. A category, an us and a them. And the human brain, given even the flimsiest excuse, will construct tribal psychology on top of it with extraordinary speed and intensity. A football shirt is not a flimsy excuse. It is a vivid, colorful, publicly worn declaration of tribal membership. It is the most efficient enemy-generating signal your ancient brain has ever been handed. But it goes deeper than that. When you look at a fan of the opposing team, something specific happens in your brain's social processing networks. Neuroscientist Lasana at University College London studied what happens when people view images of social outgroups, groups they perceive as deeply different or threatening. He found something remarkable. The medial prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for thinking about other people as human beings with inner lives and experiences, showed reduced activation when viewing members of the outgroup. In other words, the brain partially dehumanizes the other group automatically, at the neural level, without any conscious intention to do so. This is not a flaw. It is a feature. It is an ancient mechanism designed to make conflict easier. If the rival tribe crossing your territory is fully humanized, if you see their children, their fears, their hunger, it becomes harder to defend against them.
The brain learned over millions of years to turn down the humanity of the threat, to see the enemy as the enemy, not as a person. And for 90 minutes on a Saturday, the fan in the other end of the stadium is your rival tribe. There is another mechanism at work, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human social psychology. Psychologists call it in-group out-group bias, and it operates on a simple but devastating principle. We judge the actions of our own group charitably, and the identical actions of the other group harshly. Your striker goes down in the box. You see a player protecting himself from a dangerous challenge. Their striker goes down in the same box. You see a cheat. Your fans celebrate loudly. You see passion. Their fans celebrate loudly. You see arrogance. Your manager argues with the referee. You see a man fighting for justice. Their manager argues with the same referee. You see a disgrace. The behavior is identical. The perception is entirely different. And the reason is
not hypocrisy, not exactly. The reason is that your brain is applying two completely different interpretive frameworks based on a single piece of information: which team they belong to. This is the same cognitive mechanism your ancestors used to evaluate rival tribes. Every action by a member of your group was interpreted through a lens of trust and charitable assumption. Every action by a member of the rival group was interpreted through a lens of suspicion and threat. This asymmetry was not irrational. In the ancestral environment, it was life-saving. Getting it wrong, trusting the enemy, doubting the ally, could cost your life. You no longer live in that environment, but your brain does not know that. Evolutionary psychologist Robert Cialdini spent years studying what he called the burgeoning phenomenon, basking in reflected glory. He found that after a win, fans would wear team merchandise more, use the word "we" more, and actively seek out social opportunities to align themselves with the victory. After a loss, the opposite happened. Fans distanced themselves from the team, used "they" instead of "we," and avoided public displays of affiliation. But here is what Cialdini found that is less often discussed. The intensity of the negative reaction toward the opposing team increased significantly after a loss. Hatred, and it is not too strong a word, of the rival group surged precisely when the in-group felt diminished. The enemy becomes more of an enemy not when they do something terrible, but when your own group suffers. The rival fan is not hated more because they behaved worse. They are hated more because you lost. This tells you something profound about the nature of rivalry. It is not primarily about the other team. It is about your own sense of status, worth, and dominance. The rival fan is the mirror in which your group's position is reflected. When that mirror shows you winning, they are merely the opposition. When it shows you losing, they become something closer to a threat to your identity itself. And identity, as your brain understands it, is a survival issue. Consider what happens when two sets of fans occupy the same space. Research by sports psychologist Eric Stice at the University of Oregon showed that intergroup contact in competitive contexts, fans of opposing teams sharing space during high-stakes matches, activates the same neural pathways as perceived physical threat. Heart rate rises, cortisol floods the system, vigilance sharpens. The body prepares for confrontation even when no confrontation is coming, even when everyone involved is entirely aware that this is a sporting event, not a territorial dispute. Your body does not make that distinction. And in 2026, when 48 nations send their tribes to 3 different countries for the biggest World Cup in history, this ancient machinery will run at a scale it has rarely encountered before. 48 in-groups, 48 out-groups, hundreds of millions of fans simultaneously activating the oldest social software human beings possess. Different languages, different histories, different rivalries stretching back decades or centuries. All of it compressed into 90-minute windows where the amygdala runs the show and the rational mind watches from a distance, occasionally sending memos that nobody reads. You will watch a team you have never supported and feel in your gut that you want them to lose. Not because they have done anything wrong, not because their fans have offended you, simply because in that moment, in that ancient calculation your brain runs without asking permission, they are the other group. And the other group, your brain has decided since before you had a word for any of this, is always the threat. So the next time you feel that flare of something dark and irrational toward the stranger in the rival shirt, that flash of contempt or hostility or tribal fury toward someone you have never wronged you and will never see again, know that you are not a bad person having a bad thought. You are a 2-million-year-old survival machine doing exactly what it was designed to do. It just happens to be doing it at a football match.